There is a hush that falls over the world in moments of deepest despair, a silence so loud it echoes through your bones. In that space where words have failed and strength has fled, where even the breath feels too heavy to draw in, a whisper rises, not from outside, not from the mouths of others, not from the books of wise men, but from within the soul. It is not formed in syllables or woven in eloquence. It does not demand, argue, or plea. It simply is. And that whisper is prayer. One prayer, just one. A single offering from the heart, raw and trembling, cracked wide open by life's storms. One prayer can shift everything. I have walked down dusty roads with nothing but broken sandals and a head full of questions. I have wept into the earth asking the same question over and over again, why, as if the winds could carry back an answer. I have stood at the edge of my own mind, threatened by despair that dressed itself in all black, grief at my door like an unwelcome guest that refused to leave. But in the stillness of my most undone moment, I prayed, not because I was brave, not because I was strong, but because I was empty, and somehow even emptiness becomes sacred when it leans toward heaven. That prayer, spoken without poetry, without a script, without understanding, moved something. Not immediately in the world outside me, but within. The roots of my soul curled tighter into faith. Something held me, something unseen. People ask, can one prayer really change things? And I say yes. Not because it is loud, not because it is long, but because it is real. You see, when you pray, truly pray, you are not simply uttering a wish. You are standing in the furnace of surrender, stripping away pretense, laying bare your heart before a force larger than time and kinder than eternity. That moment, that act, that submission, it does not go unnoticed by the heavens. The universe bends toward the voice that comes not from lips but from spirit. That kind of prayer does not bounce back empty. We live in a world where everything is rushing, people chasing after applause, after dollars, after meaning, after each other. They forget to be still. They forget that the power to realign the very stars is not in the next big thing, but in the sacred smallness of prayer. Just one. One honest, gut-wrenching cry to God, to the source, to the divine. Whatever name your soul knows, that is where power lies. That is where heaven listens. I have seen hardened men crumble into tears when they finally whispered their first true prayer. I have watched women broken by betrayal and loss find strength again, not by building walls but by kneeling in vulnerability. I have witnessed children too young to know theology bow their heads with a faith too big to be taught. And in every one of those moments a quiet revolution began. Because that is what prayer does. It starts revolutions not on battlefields but in hearts. It flips the tables of fear, of shame, of despair. It rearranges the furniture of the soul until you can breathe again, stand again, dream again. Don't let the world fool you into thinking prayer is weak. Prayer is the language of warriors. Prayer is the trembling that shakes the very gates of the impossible. Prayer is the melody of the brave, the rhythm of those who refuse to give up even when their voice shakes and their knees buckle. You do not need a cathedral to shift the universe. You need only a moment of truth. One honest prayer right there in your kitchen or in your car or as you lay wide-eyed at 3 a.m. can summon the kind of change that decades of striving cannot achieve. Because prayer isn't about formulas, it is about faith. Sometimes all it takes is a whisper. Help me. That's it. You do not have to be poetic. You do not have to know the right words. You do not have to sound holy. You simply need to be honest. Real prayer does not live in perfection, it lives in desperation, in awe, in humility. And from the moment it is spoken, it moves. It moves through darkness like a spark. It climbs the ladders of heaven like smoke. It wraps itself around God's heart and pulls down grace like a child tugging on a parent's sleeve. See me, it says. And heaven replies, I do. The shift might not look like thunder. It might not arrive with lightning. The clouds might not part and angels may not sing. But something shifts. It always does. Perhaps the mountain outside stays the same, but the mountain inside begins to crumble. The fear loosens its grip. The pain softens its edge. The strength you thought was gone begins to hum beneath your ribs again. That is the shift. That is the miracle. That is the turning point. And it all begins with one prayer. There will be days when you cannot find the words. That's all right. Your tears are fluent in prayer. There will be nights when your anger roars louder than your hope. That's all right too. Even rage, when offered to God, becomes holy. There will be times when silence is all you can manage. Do not mistake that silence for absence. Sometimes the most powerful prayer is not said aloud but breathed through trembling lungs. The Spirit hears. The divine translates. The heart speaks in ways the mouth never could. When you feel lost, pray. When you feel strong, pray. When you have no idea what to feel, pray. Let it become your rhythm, your refuge, your revolution. Let it rise from you like incense, like morning dew, like the song of one who remembers that no matter how dark the road, light still exists. Prayer does not always change our circumstance immediately, but it always changes us. And when we change, the world begins to shift in response. Do not underestimate the might of that one moment. One seed planted in faith can bloom into forests of miracles. One prayer can crack the stone around your soul and let the river of purpose flow again. One cry in the middle of the night can realign your destiny. I have known people on the brink of ending it all, who whispered one final prayer and woke the next morning with peace so deep they didn't understand it. I have known people buried under mountains of regret, who dared to pray again and were lifted by mercy that makes no sense by human standards. You see, God is not deaf. Heaven is not asleep. The ears of eternity are tuned to the fragile voice of hope. And if you have the courage to speak it, to dare believe that something bigger is listening, then you have already begun the shift. You don't need to shout. You just need to show up. Bring your wounds, bring your worry. Bring your worn-out faith and your weary spirit. Bring your past, your present, your uncertainty. Lay it all down and say, "Here I am." That alone is a prayer. That alone is enough. And you may find that the shift begins in a whisper, a phone call you didn't expect, a diagnosis that isn't as bad as it could have been, a door that opens where you thought there were only walls. Or maybe it is the fire inside you rekindled. Maybe it is forgiveness long overdue. Maybe it is joy, unexpected and overwhelming. Maybe it is a strength so fierce it surprises even you. Whatever the form, it is coming, because one prayer can shift everything. We are taught to chase, to strive, to grind. But let me tell you this, there is a sacred power in surrender. There is wisdom in letting go and falling into the arms of something greater. Not because you are giving up, but because you are trusting up. You are choosing to believe that you are not alone, that your story matters, that your voice, however cracked and broken, is still heard. That belief, when wrapped in prayer, is an unstoppable force. If you could see the way heaven leans in when you pray, you would never doubt again. If you could hear the angels pause, the stars hold their breath, the spirits stir just because your soul dared to speak, you would fall to your knees, not in fear but in awe. You are not forgotten. You are not abandoned. And the distance you feel is not a sign of rejection but an invitation to speak, to return, to reconnect. One prayer, that's all. So today, whether your hands are lifted high or folded low, whether your voice is loud or silent, whether your heart is whole or shattered, pray. Don't wait for a perfect moment. Don't wait to be worthy. Worthiness is not a prerequisite for being heard. Love is not earned in the kingdom of heaven. You were born worthy of love, of grace, of attention. Your prayer is not a burden to God, it is the delight of heaven. And when you speak, when you whisper, when you sigh with hope or sorrow or longing, something shifts. Something always shifts. And in that shift, there is healing. In that shift, there is clarity. In that shift, there is peace that passes all understanding. There is wisdom you never studied. There is courage you didn't know you had. There is resilience born from the ashes. There is beauty rising from your brokenness. One prayer can awaken all of that. One moment can carry you from the shadows into the sun. And you, beloved, are worthy of that light. So do not wait. Do not second-guess the power that is already within you. The world may tell you to fix everything with effort, with logic, with strategy. But I tell you this, some mountains will only move when you kneel. Some battles will only be won in surrender. Some destinies will only be revealed in the silence between words, where your soul communes with the divine. Go there. Trust it. Pray, because one prayer, just one, can shift everything. There is a sacredness that often goes unnoticed in the world, a quiet unfolding beneath the rush of daily living. It happens when a woman stands by her window, hands clasped, staring out at nothing but the echo of her own worries, and still she prays. It happens when a man, broken by the weight of providing, sits in the driver's seat a moment longer after work, letting the stillness speak for him as he whispers a plea. It happens when a child, too small to understand the full shape of loss, presses a hand to their chest and says please, to a God they cannot see but somehow already trust. These moments are not small. They are not silent in the heavens, they are thunder, they are earthquakes, they are the beginning of the turning. Because when a soul prays, the soul is saying, I believe there is more, and that belief, that one thread of faith, becomes a lifeline. It is the rope that ties us to hope when everything else falls away. It is the map in the wilderness. It is the whisper of light in a room that has only ever known darkness. You do not need to have it all together to offer that prayer. In fact, the most powerful prayers are the ones offered from the fragments, the shattered places, the hollowed-out holes in our hearts. The divine does not turn away from brokenness. No, it leans in, it draws near. And maybe you've been praying for a long time. Maybe your knees are sore from the waiting, your voice hoarse from asking, your heart tired from hoping. Maybe you've seen no change and you're starting to wonder if your prayers have simply been scattered to the wind. But I tell you, nothing said in faith is ever lost. Not a single whisper, not a single tear. Every prayer is planted, and though you may not see the sprouting, the roots are growing deep. Sometimes the answer is delayed because the foundation must be made strong enough to carry the blessing. Sometimes the shift is not in front of you but beneath you, holding you steady when the storm comes harder. You were not created to beg, you were created to believe. Prayer is not groveling, it is rising. It is the audacity to speak to the heavens and expect an answer. It is the courage to say, I still believe, even after the loss, even after the betrayal, even after the dream has died and been buried twice over. Prayer is not weakness, it is defiance against despair. It is the refusal to be silenced by suffering. It is the roar of a lion inside a lamb's body. One prayer, yes, one, can become the spark that lights up your whole life again. I have seen it, time and again. I have seen the ones left behind become the ones lifted high. I have seen the cast out become the called upon. I have seen the ashamed become the anointed and the ignored become the ignited. How? Because they prayed, and because their prayer was not in vain. Nothing given to God is wasted. Not time, not trust, not tears. Your prayer has power because it is an act of partnership with the very one who shaped you. And when you speak with him, he listens. More than that, he moves. But do not think that all answers come wrapped in the shape you expect. Sometimes the shift begins with a closing door. Sometimes the blessing arrives as a goodbye. Sometimes the healing comes not in the cure but in the strength to carry on. This too is answered prayer. We must be brave enough to trust that we are being loved even in the moments we feel denied. We must understand that when we pray, we enter into something timeless, something not bound by the hours of this world but woven into the eternity of grace. There is no such thing as a small prayer. Every word, every breath, every ache carried upward is sacred. You may feel invisible here but not in heaven. You may feel overlooked but not by the one who counts every hair on your head, who writes every tear in his book, who numbers every star and still hears your name. You are known, and when you pray you awaken that knowing inside yourself again. You are reminded, you are restored. So many people walk around heavy not from what's been done to them but from what they've refused to release. Prayer is not just about asking, it is about surrendering, laying it down, saying, this is too much for me, I give it to you. That is liberation. That is the untangling of chains. That is the moment the weight begins to lift even if the problem hasn't vanished. Because the problem no longer owns you. You are no longer carrying it alone. We often confuse waiting for an answer with being forgotten. But waiting is not abandonment. Waiting is preparation. It is pruning. It is the sacred hush before the crescendo. Some of the most beautiful things take time to unfold. a rose, a sunrise, a soul restored. And while you wait, do not stop praying, because prayer is the oil that keeps your lamp burning while you watch for the dawn. It is the echo that reminds you, I am still here. It is the promise that even in silence you are not alone. There are prayers that are not answered in a moment, but in a movement of heart, a shift of spirit, a stretching of your capacity to believe. And often when you pray long enough, you become the answer to your own prayer. You become the miracle in motion. That is the mystery of faith, that in the asking we are changed, that in the seeking we are shaped, that in the knocking we are made ready for the door we never expected to open. You don't need to be anyone else to pray powerfully. You don't need a title. You don't need credentials. You don't need someone to speak for you. The veil was torn long ago. You have access. You have authority. You have the right to approach boldly. And when you do, heaven hears you as a child returning home, not a beggar but a beloved. You are not interrupting God. You are His joy. Your voice is welcomed, cherished, celebrated. So pray like you mean it. Pray like you believe again. Pray like you did before the world told you it didn't matter. Pray like your soul remembers what your mind has forgotten, that one moment of communion with the divine can realign every broken compass. That the shaking inside you is not destruction but construction. That the tears are not weakness but water for the seeds of your tomorrow. And when you do, you will feel it. The shift, the sacred stirring, the slow bloom of peace. It might not look like fireworks. It might not sound like a choir of angels. It might just be a moment of clarity, a second of strength, a breath where panic used to live. But that is enough. That is the shift. That is the miracle you've been waiting for. And it starts not in the hands of others, not in the systems of the world, but in your own spirit. It begins the moment you pray. You do not need to know how it will happen. You do not need to figure it all out. You just need to speak, and then listen. Because prayer is not a monologue, it is a dialogue. It is the soul speaking and the spirit responding. It is the laying down and the lifting up. It is the moment the finite meets the infinite, and something eternal is exchanged. Even now, even here, there is a shift available to you. Maybe you've stopped praying because you didn't see the change, but maybe the change didn't stop. It just wasn't what you expected. Maybe the door you thought you needed was actually a detour. Maybe the silence was an invitation into deeper intimacy. Maybe the waiting was the proving ground for your character, for your calling, for your courage. Don't let disappointment drown your devotion. Don't let delay be mistaken for denial. Pray again, try again, whisper it, shout it, weep it, it all counts. The heavens are not moved by eloquence, they are moved by truth. And the truth is, even now, one prayer can still shift everything. I have seen hardened lives made soft again. I have seen families restored by a prayer spoken in secret. I have seen provision come where there was only lack. I have seen love rise up from the ashes of hatred. I have seen hope be reborn, not in cathedrals but in kitchens, in hospital rooms, in prison cells, in school halls, in bedrooms where the only light was the flicker of a heart refusing to go out. And I have seen people like you become the light they prayed for. I have seen them rise with peace and purpose. I have seen them walk back into battles with heads lifted high. I have seen them carry burdens with joy, speak truth with tenderness, love boldly where bitterness once ruled, all because something shifted, and it began with one moment, one whisper, one choice to believe that prayer still matters. So wherever you are right now, however far gone you feel, however deep the pit or loud the storm, you are not beyond reach. You are not too broken. You are not too late. The invitation still stands. The door is still open. The ears of grace are still inclined toward you. And the moment you speak, yes, even now, the shift begins. Not because you are perfect, but because you are loved. Not because you earned it, but because you are seen. Not because you know the way, but because you were made to find it. And it starts with one prayer. There is something sacred about a soul that refuses to stop praying, not because life has been gentle, but because something within that soul knows that every storm has a shore, that every shadow eventually breaks before the light. That knowing is not logic, it is not taught in books, It is carved deep, passed down from spirit to spirit, whispered in the quiet spaces between suffering and survival. When you pray, even when nothing seems to change, even when it hurts to believe, you are breathing life into that ancient knowing, and that breath, invisible as it may seem, shakes the very fabric of your future. Do not be fooled into thinking that prayer is passive. Oh no, beloved. Prayer is not sitting still while the world passes by. Prayer is the turning point, the invisible work, the digging deep, the breaking open of the ground so something beautiful can take root. It is war in the unseen realm. It is the unlocking of doors you cannot see, the rerouting of plans you didn't even know were leading to ruin. It is the planting of seeds in soil you once cursed as barren. And in time, often in the moments you least expect it, those seeds rise. They blossom. They become the fruit of a life surrendered, trusted, held. I have seen it in the ones who were told it was over, people left behind, dismissed, discarded, who prayed not for revenge but for restoration. And restoration came, not always in the form of what was lost, but in something new, something stronger, something wrapped in grace. I have witnessed the forgotten raise their voices in prayer and watch as doors open no man could close. I have known women crushed under generations of silence who found their song again through the trembling lips of a prayer. I have seen men carrying shame like a second skin finally fall to their knees, not in defeat but in freedom. Because that is what prayer does. It unshackles, it unearths, it makes the impossible possible. And if you are reading this, listening to this, breathing with this, then maybe this is your moment. Maybe this is your invitation, not to become someone else, not to fix everything in one day, but to begin, to return, to try again, one breath, one whisper, one quiet moment of surrender. That's where the shift begins. Some people think the shift has to feel dramatic, that the heavens must open, that thunder must roll, that fire must fall. But the greatest miracles often arrive disguised as ordinary moments. A sense of peace after years of chaos, a sudden clarity in the fog, the strength to say no, the courage to say yes, the forgiveness that finally settles into your bones and lets you sleep again. These are not small things. These are tectonic shifts of the soul, and they begin, every single one of them, with prayer. There is nothing you have done that disqualifies you from being heard. Hear me again. Nothing. Not the mistakes, not the betrayals, not the years you walked away, not the lies you believed about yourself. You are not too far. You are not too late. The mercy of God does not operate on human timelines. It is timeless. And when you lift your voice, even trembling, even unsure, you connect yourself to that timeless mercy. You drink from a well that never runs dry. You step into a love that does not keep count of your wrongs, but keeps record of every time you tried again. That is the love you pray into. That is the place from which the shift flows. So speak, beloved. Speak your truth. Speak your pain. Speak your need. Speak your gratitude. Speak your longing. Whether your voice is strong or barely a whisper, it matters. Whether your words are elegant or tangled in tears, they are received. Heaven does not grade your grammar. God does not require a script. All that is needed is your heart, open and offered. And when you offer it, really offer it, something changes. Maybe not all at once, maybe not where others can see. But inside, something begins to loosen. The grip of fear weakens. The echoes of doubt grow quieter. The fog begins to thin. And with every prayer you are led one step closer to what you were always meant to be. Whole, free, alive. You may not even recognize yourself on the other side of your prayers. And that is the beauty of it. Prayer is not about changing God's mind. It is about aligning yours with His. It is about becoming who you truly are beneath the wounds, beneath the stories others wrote for you, beneath the armor you've had to wear for too long. Prayer peels it all back, layer by layer, until all that's left is the truth. You were made in love, for love, by love. And love has never stopped calling your name. There will be days you do not feel like praying, days when bitterness feels easier, when silence feels safer, when cynicism masquerades as wisdom. On those days, pray anyway. Not because you feel it, but because you believe somewhere deep down that it still matters. Prayer is not a performance, it is a practice. And every time you show up, you train your soul to remember who it belongs to. You remind your spirit that it is never, not once alone. And yes, there will be nights when you weep, when it feels like your prayers are falling on deaf ears, when it seems like nothing is shifting. But hear this, beloved. Delay is not denial. Silence is not absence. Every prayer you've ever prayed still exists, echoing in eternity, waiting for the right moment to unfold. And often the shift you long for begins in the waiting. Not because the answer is withheld, but because the process is sacred, because the becoming is just as important as the blessing. So pray through the process, trust the unfolding, cling to hope even when it feels paper thin, because it is not the size of your hope that matters, it is where you place it. And when you place it in the one who holds time, who weaves beauty from ashes, who breathes life into dead places, then even the smallest prayer becomes mighty, even the softest whisper moves mountains. And sometimes the most profound prayers are not about asking for more but for less. Less fear, less pride, less control. Sometimes the shift you need is not in your surroundings but in your surrender, in letting go of what was never yours to carry, in opening your clenched fists and saying, "Here, take this, I trust you." That kind of prayer is not weakness, it is wild strength, it is raw faith. It is the kind of faith that rebuilds lives, restores families, rewrites stories. You are not forgotten, your prayers are not forgotten, even if it's been years, even if the thing you prayed for was buried, even if the dream you carried slipped through your fingers, it still matters, and more than that, it still lives. Because prayer breathes life into what seems lifeless. Prayer resurrects, prayer rebuilds. You may not see the shift today, you may not see it tomorrow, but one day, you will look back and realize something happened, something moved, something changed inside you and around you, and it will trace all the way back to the moment you chose to pray. That one moment, that one leap of faith. So keep praying, keep whispering, keep crying out, keep surrendering. You are not wasting your words. You are building a bridge to something greater. You are aligning yourself with a current of love and power and wisdom that far surpasses anything this world can offer. You are not alone in this. The same breath that fills your lungs fills the sky. The same spirit that formed the stars hears you when you speak. The same love that carved rivers through mountains flows toward you when you call. And when you do call, something shifts, not always outside you but always within. And when the inside changes, the outside follows. You are standing on holy ground every time you pray, whether it's at your kitchen sink, in your car, in your bed, or walking down the street. Your prayer makes it holy. Your faith, however fragile, makes it sacred. Your voice, however weary, makes it heard. So rise up even if rising feels like a whisper. Speak up even if all you can say is help. Believe again even if belief feels broken. Because the shift is coming, because the heavens are listening, because grace is real, because love never fails, because one prayer, just one, can still even now shift everything. And if all you can do is sit in silence, know that even silence can be prayer when your heart is turned toward God. The tears that fall without words, the groans too deep for speech, the ache in your chest when you cannot explain your pain, that too is prayer, that too is heard. And even in that silence, even in that ache, something shifts. Because the truth is, prayer is not just about moving heaven, it is about remembering who you are. It is the tether to your Creator, the conversation that carries you back home, the moment you are reminded that you are loved not for what you do but for who you are. And in that remembering you rise, not by your strength but by the strength of the one who made you. You rise and you keep rising, prayer by prayer, shift by shift, breath by breath. And so it is. Even now, even here, one prayer can shift everything. Sometimes the greatest miracles come softly. They arrive not in the shouts but in the stillness, not in the crowds but in the quiet corners where no one is watching, where no one is cheering, where you are alone with your own trembling heart. It is there, in that sacred silence, that prayer becomes more than words, it becomes breath. It becomes the language your soul speaks when it has forgotten how to pretend. and in that sacred moment the universe bends low to listen, not to the eloquence of your plea but to the honesty of your ache. You do not have to scream to be heard. You do not have to be right, perfect, strong, or even hopeful. You simply have to be real. That's what prayer asks of you. Not polish, not performance, not pretense, just truth, just you, as you are, before the one who knows every corner of your soul and loves you still. When you stand in that kind of truth, when you open yourself even just a little, something begins to move. Maybe not around you, maybe not yet, but in you. And sometimes the inshift is the one that matters most. Because what good is it for everything around you to change if you remain bound inside? One prayer, that's where it begins. You may not feel it. You may not see it. But that one moment of surrender, of whispering what you dare not say out loud, begins a cascade in the unseen. It calls down angels. It shakes the unseen realms. It unsettles the darkness. It speaks life into dry bones. And even if you never feel the wind change, you will find that you yourself are different. Your spine straighter, your heart steadier, your hands no longer clenched in fear but opened in faith. People may not understand what you're doing. They may not see the shift. They may say you're just talking to the air. But you know better. Because something inside you begins to rise. Not always fast. Not always loud. But steadily, like the tide. That rising, that unexplainable peace, that sudden clarity, that persistent strength that is the sign, that is the proof, that is the quiet thunder of a soul aligned with its creator. And it doesn't stop there. Because once you begin to pray, truly pray, the world inside you grows bigger. You begin to pray for others, for those you love, for those who hurt you, for those you never met but whose names make you weep. And that kind of prayer, the kind born from compassion, from pain, from empathy, that kind of prayer reshapes you entirely. It expands your heart. It dissolves bitterness. It shifts your eyes until you begin to see others, not through fear or pride or judgment, but through grace. And when you pray from grace, you start to live from grace. You start to forgive quicker. You start to walk gentler. You start to speak softer, with conviction, not cruelty. You start to carry yourself like someone who knows they're held. Because that's what prayer does. It roots you, not in arrogance, not in certainty, but in assurance, in quiet confidence, that no matter what comes, you are not alone.